Good day, everyone. Well, we've had questions on GBTC, ETHE that are owned by Grayscale. The discount rate on GBTC is exceeding 50% now because of the perceived risks involved in holding GBTC. The CEO of Grayscale wrote in their end-of-year letter, I'll just read a portion here. Grayscale's parent company, Digital Currency Group, and our affiliate firm, Genesis Global Capital, are not counterparties or service providers for GBTC or any of our other products, and as such, do not impact our products' operations. Grayscale, including GBTC, are separate and distinct legal entities, meaning the assets underlying GBTC are owned by GBTC and GBTC shareholders alone. Both DCG rather, and Genesis Global Capital are affiliates of GBTC as well as shareholders, and together with other entities collectively own nearly 10% of the total shares outstanding. Okay, so that basically implies that there won't be a bank run on GBTC, but then the CEO goes on the right. If GBTC is able to conduct a tender offer for a portion of the GBTC shares, following the tender offer, we currently expect that we would continue operating GBTC without an ongoing redemption program until we are successful in converting it to a spot Bitcoin ETF. Although we may consider doing the additional tender offers thereafter, subject to obtaining SEC relief. In the event we are unsuccessful in pursuing options for returning a portion of the capital to shareholders, we do not currently intend to dissolve GBTC, but would intend to operate GBTC without an ongoing redemption program until we are successful in converting it to a spot Bitcoin ETFs. So basically, that just means they can conduct a tender offer of a size of their choosing if and only if the SEC allows it. And if the SEC doesn't, and you all know that Grayscale is suing the SEC for not allowing them an ETF, so this case could drag on for years. So if the SEC does not allow it, then a portion of capital will not be returned to shareholders until they are successful in converting GBTC into a spot Bitcoin ETF. So this would, I would just say that I think the shareholders in GBTC, these original ones, are stuck. And at the time that I'm saying this, GBTC is just off 90% from its peak, while BTC is off about 75% from its peak. And remember, that's not a difference of 15%. It would take a tenfold gain for investors in GBTC to break even from this point versus a fourfold gain for holders of actual Bitcoin. So people who want an alternative to GBTC but don't want to buy or sell crypto, whether it's on something like Coinbase or decentralized like Uniswap, I would say you got to do your due diligence. And this is never investment advice, but you'll find that there are some vehicles out there that may work for you that are traded on normal stock exchanges. I think they're probably in the form of ETNs or something. That's how they got them through. So they're not ETFs, but they're designed, or let's just say they attempt to mirror the price of Bitcoin. But that said, you got to look into this stuff because a lot of these things these days have counterparty risk. So what if you decide to go with something out there that's traded on an exchange in the form of some ETN or whatnot? Just look into the risks because there's a lot of house of cards going on is related to crypto these days. Now, as far as markets, the drop in major averages so far in December is kind of like how markets were performing in December 2018. And 2018 December was the worst for the S&P 500 since 1931. December 2018 was the Christmas crash. And both December 2018 and this year had a hawkish Fed. The Fed did pivot after the Christmas crash on December 24th, 2018. in the sense of holding an emergency meeting and saying to markets that they're not going to tighten the balance sheet and they're going to basically reconsider everything. And that was the major low. But this year is not 2018. Debt and inflation are far higher, which strong arms the Fed into staying the course to fulfill their mandate of 2% inflation. Interest rates have to climb above inflation if inflation is going to be tamed. And meanwhile, inflation is still well above interest rates. I mean, if you use the PCE, it came in at 5% last month, and maybe this month it's going to come in a little bit lower, but that's still a chasm above 2%. And so we've been saying the NASDAQ composite dead bat bounce was one of the more obvious as it lagged the Dow Industrials, and no new bull market ever started with the Dow Industrials leading the way since they're a concentrated blue chip focused relatively risk off index. The bounce in the NASDAQ also was far more begrudging over the last many weeks compared to its prior bounces early this year. So unless we get some sort of material news regarding a black swan or some form of metrics that points to a far weaker economy than predicted, markets will likely head lower in the coming weeks to months as the Fed hikes at least 2 more times, and that would bring the Fed funds rate to 475 to 500. Gil, how are you seeing everything?
Yeah, we're still in a bear market. I mean, people want to believe that we started a glorious new bull market, but as we've been saying, you know, we know what a bull market looks like, and this does not look like a bull market at all. And I think anybody with half a brain who didn't just sign up for IBD can figure that out. So, you know, the NASDAQ, we've been saying, is just kind of stuck in a bear flag, and it still is. We headed for the lows of that a couple days ago on Monday, and yesterday found a low, and that made sense after you came down 4 days in a row. Now we're heading back to the 50-day line ahead of Christmas. Makes perfect sense to me. So, you know, everybody's going to jack it because I don't know what, you know, there's nobody really selling, so they're going to push it. And that's basically that. Meanwhile, the Dow definitely had a double top a week ago, and that was here. So boom. And now it's pushing back into the 10 and the 20. It's been finding support at the 50, but it's not the tell-all index. You know, when you have a 30 stock index versus what's going on in how many stocks in the NASDAQ composite? Isn't it 1,000?
Something like that. It's quite large.
And the S&P, which of course has 500, you know, that's really telling you the story. So it basically ran into resistance at the 200-day line. We've already talked about this before because it's done that. Let's see if I can get this to do it. Actually, you just look at the weekly chart of the SPY and you can see it. It's just run right into trend line resistance. You know, just draw the trend line along those tops and you can see it. So, you know, and I really, really want to caution people from listening to IBD. I mean, I'm kind of disgusted with them because I know, number one, that we both know that Bill is not involved. Okay. And Bill's the one who first told me, you know, you got to watch out when the Dow is leading the market. That's a warning sign, usually. And unless you start to see the other indexes kick in, you cannot assume that you have a bull market. Yeah, you have all these bozos and IBD running around talking about the confirmed rally, the uptrend under pressure. But they don't have any perspective, and there's nobody there anymore who isn't just an IBD reporter. And a lot of those guys, I know them. You know, they've been there for 20, 30 years, and they're so good at the market that they still work for a newspaper, okay? Just stop and think about it. You know, I think if you're actually a good trader over time, and yes, we all have our up years and our down years and our winning streaks, our losing streaks, but over time you survive, you prosper, and you eventually just do your own gig. That's kind of what we do now, okay? And so I would just be very, very cautious. And I run into a lot of people who are getting chopped up pretty nicely following that silly newspaper. And my guess is it will soon be out of business because you can't be that incompetent for that long telling that many people the exact wrong thing to do at the wrong time, and also not recognizing how the market has changed, because it has changed considerably. It's no longer driven by mutual funds. So, Chris, I hear some weird, is that me scratching away?
That's you.
Up?
That's you somehow.
Yeah, you're feeding back. I don't know if other people can hear it, but I can. But Man, I sound pretty bad. I mean, I know I've got a cold here, which they call it COVID, but it's more like a cold to me. Uh, but I didn't think I sounded that bad. Anyways, I guess it's probably the way the speaker comes back at me. In any
You
case,
sound okay to me, actually. You sound pretty normal. I was actually going to say we didn't get to it, but you're yeah, you got the latest strain, which is it's a lot more mild than the first two strains. So
yeah, it's not really even a bad cold. And yet the media around here in LA, oh my God, they're making such a big, oh, the number of cases is 1,000. So, well, guess what? You don't know about my case, so I guess you're undercounting them. So it's all much more worse than you're reporting it. So we should all run around screaming. It's like it's become absurd. Um, anyways, but that's just my experience. And actually, everybody in my household has had it, and they're all done with it. And it was a cold for everybody. So.
and whatever happened with influenza, that kills millions every year, but that got all of a sudden stopped. People stopped dying from influenza when COVID hit,
It
because
was
all the deaths
canceled.
from
They
influenza,
canceled influenza.
yeah, they canceled it, and all the deaths from influenza got scored by COVID.
Yeah, exactly. All right, all right. So what do you do? Okay, well, we've been on probably the best trade in the market, and that has been silver. Silver's been in a steady uptrend. We picked off this moving average undercut and rally, had some undercut and rallies down here, and it's trending higher, and it's holding the trend. It's a very clean trend, and it continues to move higher. And you also have gold has been moving higher. It's a little slower, but my guess is you may see this pick up speed in 2023 when the Fed starts to pivot. The other dynamic that's going on, and I think is very important to consider here when you're thinking about alternative currencies in general, is that when you look at, say, gold and silver when priced in other currencies, it's actually been doing much better than in dollars. And why is that? Well, because the dollar has reserve currency status. But a lot of countries are starting to move to get together and think about ways to replace the dollar as the reserve currency, the global reserve currency. And I think that's going to happen. And I think it's going to happen sooner than later. And when it does happen, look out, because all hell's going to break loose. Uh, Meanwhile, other people are pointing out that the Fed is actually starting to lose money with their assets. What do they have now, Chris? Like 8 trillion, 9 trillion? What is it up to now? Are you there?
Hello? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I hear you.
Can you
So,
hear me?
yeah,
Yeah.
I hear you.
Yeah, no, it's a huge. I was somehow this had muted, but it's yeah, it's a huge number, and it's only ultimately going to go higher because at this late stage, M2 never materially drops. I mean, they're only going to be able to hike rates a couple more times. I mean, Goldman thinks they're going to be able to do it till the terminal rates up beyond 6%. I don't think the markets will allow it because the debt is too large, unless they want to play tricks and do the QE light at the same time. So in other words, they're going to be printing money at the same time as they're hiking rates, which is a nice little accounting trick. But and that
Right.
of course would I don't think that's very good for markets. I think, well, ultimately we maybe won't get capitulation, but we get this chop slop sideways junk for a prolonged period if they want to play that game, which would be unfortunate. That's why I'm kind of almost hoping for a black swan, because that can just
Wash it out.
it'll push them in. Yeah, it'll wash it out and it'll push them in one direction or another, and not just on the sidelines. I don't really want to have another Japan on our hands where they have 3 lost decades now since 1990
Yeah.
because of the really ineffective monetary policy of what they do there. And I think the U.S. would be in a problem. The whole world actually would be in a problem situation if we got to that point. I'd rather, see just a bleed out, wash out, like Ray Dalio describes, where you get in the past you get some sort of revolution, because countries won't stand for double digit inflation for very long, and that's where we're at right now.
Yeah. Anyways, so obviously with the precious metals moving, the miners have been doing well. And one of the few areas that you see move up and kind of hang there. So a lot of these are pushing higher today, like Anglo Gold Ashanti. This is probably my favorite miners for the simple reason that they're extremely leveraged to the price of gold. And if you look at, professional investors, institutional investors, whoever's still left out there that isn't an algo, when they're evaluating these companies, the price of gold figures heavily into the price targets. So if you're producing gold at around $1,300 an ounce, as AU is, Anglo Gold is, then right now you're sitting here at what, 1825. So you got about $525 profit margin there, just against the cost of production. Okay, now if you rise to 2100 from here, that's another 300. That's a 60% rise in your margins, and that jacks the price wildly. I mean, I've seen some valuation models that show if the price of gold just got to 2200, you could see a price in something like this of $90. So there's some potential here. We'll see how this plays out. But to me, it's very interesting, depending on the dynamics of how the whole Fed thing and the reserve currency thing plays out, along with just the general view that the dollar is ready to tank, and it has been. So these are doing well. So we can go through these, and AU is leading. Goldfields, one of the biggest miners in the world. They were stymied in their attempt to purchase Yamana Gold, which now Agnico Eagle and Pan American Silver are going to buy as a team. But this one's just pushing into the 200-day line here. First Majestic is a silver miner. The silver miners have been less robust, but overall everything's trending higher, and it's now basing. So, of course, I think we want to keep an eye on this group if you're not into some of these lower down, because we've been talking about them for the last few weeks, if not the last couple of months or so. And you get a pocket pivot yesterday in Pan American. A lot of times, though, the strong moves aren't really where you want to be jumping in. You want to be looking for the pullbacks and the moving averages, the undercut and rallies off the lows, etc. Barrick Gold acting well. Franco-Nevada, they own production streams, and I'm not really sure what's going on here, but that's never been one I've really cared for. Agnico is a decent one. They posted a pocket pivot yesterday. BVN, the stock was tanking. This is a silver miner out of Mexico. Mexico is the largest producer of silver, largest producing country of silver in the world. And you can see you've got an undercut and rally going on here along the lows. If I bring up my crosshairs, that's what's going on. But it broke the 50-day line and then rallied back above it. So that's a moving average undercut and rally. That's also a buy signal. Now, what caused a sell-off is the fact that Peru is currently on lockdown. And there have been nationwide protests. I haven't really checked up on the latest news there. If anybody knows, let me know. But that has because people are protesting, you lock the country down. They can't bring in supplies either in or out of the mines right now, and so they're shut down for now until they can get things opened up again. I assume when that happens, you may see a spring back. You're already seeing some anticipation of that, but it's not really holding up. But that is a quality silver miner, along with Pan American and First Majestic. I mean, these companies all produce a fair amount of silver. And of course, if the price of silver goes to $50 again, like we saw back when Chris and I played it perfectly, just about perfectly, right, Chris? Probably one of the very, very few things either one of us have ever played perfectly, but I'll take it. Back in, what was that, 2012? Yeah. And so you see, here's Wheaton Precious Metals and hanging in a base. So these look okay. If I go to a weekly chart, you can see you're going to see a lot of flag formations in a lot of these. Some of them, like silver, just keeps going higher, 4 weeks up in a row. Royal Gold, a little flag. So you can see the bases here might be 2, 3, 4 weeks in some cases. A Cisco Gold Royalties. I tend to like this name as well. If we look at an intraday chart, you can see you did have an undercut and rally, but it's just kind of hanging and basing. So nothing to get all foamy at the mouth about, but they're setting up, and I see the thematic setting up. Okay, and I think that it's definitely a space I want to be keeping an eye on. So that maybe shows it a little bit better. But that looks like a constructive pattern to me. It's not really going anywhere, but it's not like it has to right now. But I do think this is an area that you want to watch. And this is probably one of my best thematic areas of the market right now, in my view, that could be setting up. And we'll see how things play out. But I think so far, the bases that they're setting up after the moves off the lows in October look okay. So I think you have this list here. I've got 17 names I just went through. Eldorado Gold, Newmont Mining, SSR Mining, Cisco Gold Royalties, Wheaton Precious Metals, Buenaventura Mines, Franco Nevada. Like I said, not really sure what's going on here. That's kind of the outlier. There's always one, right? Agnico, AEM, Barrick Gold, the old American Barrick that merged with Gold Corp and they become Barrick Gold Corp. Mag Silver, which is one of the strongest cash flow junior silver miners out there, but it tends to be very volatile. And we can see that here in the fact that you get this big pocket pivot. And this is why I tell you, you don't want to chase strength in any of these. You always want to be opportunistic. And a lot of times when they look their ugliest, that's the time to step in. And what you'll notice here is you pull back in towards the 50-day line. You held. It looked really ugly, but it just drifts back up to the top, and you're back in the base. But you chase that move, and you get what you asked for, as far as I'm concerned. So we got Pan American Silver, PAAS weekly chart. Here we go. And you can see that the moves are nascent at best. They've just gotten started. And so I wouldn't think that, I got to jump in here. Yeah, I mean, I trade them around. If they've got, like on Friday when we had the quadruple witching, I mean, they had AU down $1 almost at the open because, it's triple witching or quadruple witching. And so there's some options related garbage going on. And I just bought it, and think Jack's back to the upside. And now here we are back at the highs. Okay. So, that's the sort of thing I'll look for. I'll lay for it, actually. Goldfields GFI. This is actually a quality miner too. You can see, while it looks like it's running into resistance at the 200-day line on the daily chart, it's actually just above the 40-week line, and it found support at the 10-week line last week. So these are, again, setting up. First Majestic, hanging along the moving average, of just kind of setting up in a little base. So that's what I like. Other than that, I don't see a lot out there. Yeah, if the Fed pivots and starts lowering rates, then sure, they're going to start jacking everything. You can pretty much throw darts. I mean, I did that yesterday. I like to play the Sox L on the long side of the semis, and I like to play the Sox S on the short side. And so you can follow all the semiconductor ETFs. You can see that last week SMH broke the 200-day line. You had the Sox breaking the 200-day line, but both of them were double toppy type maneuvers. And so you could take a position in the SOXS, that's the Direction Semiconductor Bear 3 times leverage ETF, or the SOX L. So yeah, I bought the SOX L yesterday, and because I'm looking at these two, and also you look at the main components. So whenever you buy an ETF, and this even circles back to the question about the Bitcoin thing, read the prospectus and don't be so freaking lazy. Okay. I don't understand why people buy ETFs and they never read the prospectus to understand what makes up the ETF. If they're emulating, say, the VIX, how do they do it? I get a lot of questions from me. Well, the VIX is up today, but the UVXY is down. Well, that's because, idiot, the UVXY is based on VIX futures, which are down today. So if you knew that, you would understand why. But it's obvious nobody even reads that, and it's like on the first page of the prospectus. So with these semiconductor ETFs, understand what are the primary components, what are the biggest components, and then you can watch those stocks as well, because they will give you some clues as to where these may be headed. And so if we're looking at some of the big components in this turkey, like Intel, they've been down for a few days. They're AMD. They're probably ready for a little bounce, and that's about it, maybe, But you could see that sort of coming if you were looking at NVIDIA. Let's look at NVIDIA. So these are the names that make up these indexes, and that's how you can or these ETFs, rather, I'm sorry. And that's how you can kind of figure out and kind of work your way through it. But not like it's, black and white all the time. You do have to do some interpretive work and use your judgment. But, when it comes to any ETF, like Chris said, do your due diligence. Read the prospectus. If you read the GBTC prospectus, and that's an ETN, they talk about how it may trade at substantial discounts or even premiums to the price of Bitcoin. Okay. And so when it happens, you're, oh my God, what they told you it could happen. Read the risk. What are the risks? I'm just amazed at how many people out there, they want to invest, but they always want somebody to tell them everything because they're too lazy and maybe even sometimes too stupid to, get off their butt and go through the prospectus, understand it. And if you don't understand it, figure it out, and it's that basic. And so my advice to anybody, any ETF you trade, understand what's the underlying, what are the components, what are the risks, how does it derive its value? Is it through the direct performance of the underlying, or is it through futures or whatnot? And that would go with Bitcoin as well. Do they own derivatives to own the positions, or do they own the positions themselves? So as with a Bitcoin ETF, do they own actual Bitcoin, or do they own Bitcoin futures? Okay. So those are things to think about. I think it's very important whenever you're playing any ETF that you understand what it's made of. And that gets back to the simple process of reading the prospectus. So, and I know some people say, well, the type's so small, so get a magnifying glass. Anyways, don't be so helpless. We're not about any of that. Now we're not here to create helpless, dependent subscribers. We're here to teach people how to think for themselves. Anyways, that's really all I have. Does anybody have any specific questions? Not a single question. Everybody's probably online Christmas shopping, hoping they can get something delivered by Saturday night. Is Hanukkah over? Hanukkah started a few days back, right? Chris?
Usually it goes for us, 7 days, and then, we don't celebrate it. So I couldn't give you the time frame. And a lot of my friends don't really either, even though they're Jewish and we're bar mitzvah.
I celebrate Hanukkah. So.
And you're not even Jewish.
I'm an honorary Jew. My freshman roommates made me an honorary Jew. My Jewish name is Moralowitz, just so you all know.
Right. So you're better.
Yeah, I have on the first day of Hanukkah, I have 1 martini. On the second day, I have 2 martinis, and it just keeps going. Then I caught COVID, so I had to cut back. But I guess it started Sunday, this past Sunday, and it goes on till Monday. Yeah, I like that. I remember my Jewish friends growing up. I'd be like, hey, "This is great. These guys get a present for 12 straight days. What the hell? And I get them for 1." Anyways, so that's all I've got, everybody. Thanks for showing up. Hope you have great holidays, whatever holiday you celebrate, which is Hanukkah, Christmas, Kwanzaa, if you celebrate that. I'm all for new holidays, and as far as I'm concerned, anybody can make up any holiday that they want, because you have to remember, I don't think Thanksgiving even existed until Franklin Roosevelt declared it a holiday. So make up your own holidays if you don't like the ones we already have. Anyways, so enjoy the holidays. We'll talk to you guys later. Take care.
So long, everyone.